everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the book writing journal. The last episode was 2 weeks ago, and in the last 2 weeks, so much has happened. And yet, sometimes it feels like not much has happened at all in the book writing space. But I've been learning a lot. I've been really thinking about how I spend my time. And in this update, I want to share with you where I'm at in the book writing process, some of the challenges that I've been facing, and I want to seek your feedback on a couple of things. So I encourage you to write to me or reach out in a message or however you'd like to get in contact, because I have a couple of really curious questions that I'd like to run past the audience. But first of all, I want to say thank you for writing to me on the first episode that I published and for listening through the reading of what is potentially a cold opening for my book. I'm really so grateful for the feedback that I received and the encouragement that I received as well. So thank you everybody. So this last 2 weeks, I've learned that this whole process, this of bringing a book together, is much bigger than perhaps I anticipated. And I also saw where I was completely overloaded in the number of tasks that I have taken on as a portfolio in my career. So as you know, I work as the head of performance in a very fast growing tech startup, leading a breathwork community, writing a book and doing coaching. And so one of the really tough decisions I've had to make over the last 2 weeks is where I spend my time. And I've had to put a pause on leading breathwork sessions on a weekly basis at the moment, but focusing so that I can focus my Sundays around book writing, because that seems to be the day that I feel really comfortable to just sit and put pen to page. What I've also noticed is that sometimes the writing comes very clearly, and I can, over a period of a week, maybe an hour here or half an hour there, I can put down 10,000 words on a topic. And then other times I could spend 2 hours researching, looking, and only get 500 words out on a page. And that can feel a little bit, I'm not going to say soul destroying, it's not that bad. It can just feel a little bit like, oh gosh, this is going to take so long. And I think part of it is because my process for book writing may be different to others. I've noticed that we all have different ways of doing this. I've been listening to authors who've been coming in, people who've been through this process before, and it really seems like there is no one way. Of course there isn't. But my way is around being a bit of a perfectionist. I want to, even when I do a first draft, because I've been in writing for a long time, when I do this first draft, I want it to be coherent. I want it to have the information that conveys my message accurately. I want to make sure that I've used the right words to describe things, particularly if I've been somewhere else. So I've noticed I spend a lot of time on Google Maps. And the reason why I spend a lot of time on Google Maps is because a lot of my writing is about places that I've been to or experiences that I've had in those places. And so as I'm going back through my memory banks and thinking, where was that? And, was it this place or was it this place? And so Google Maps has been a really great resource for me to dive into and look at the locations. And it often brings back the visceral memory of, oh, I remember standing there. And then I remember that conversation I had, or I remember that insight that I got. So a lot of time on Google Maps, also a lot of time on Wikipedia. And the reason why Wikipedia is a good resource for me is because when I'm thinking about historical accuracy, and I'm not saying Wikipedia has all of this and it's not 100% accurate, but at least I'm getting contextualization for places in time. I'm also Googling what was happening around me that I remember experiencing, but perhaps wasn't connected to, if that makes sense. So I'm looking at, what was happening around me? What was the context I was finding myself in? So a lot of research around that as well. And that way, when I get a first draft done, I feel pretty good about it. And I'm happy to then have somebody else read that and then come back and ask questions about what have I missed or where am I going. I'm also finding that moving spaces is helping me to write as well. So not always being in this space where I do my day work. So my day-to-day work happens here, and sometimes I can be really comfortable being in this place and writing with my earphones in and just listening to music and just really writing. And other times I really need to be somewhere else, sitting in a different chair in a different position and really contemplating. And this week, I think for the first time ever, I cried writing my book, and I don't think it's going to be the last time. But the book writing process throws up emotional stuff that I thought, not that I thought I'd dealt with, but actually what I realized is that I hadn't processed. So through the book writing, I am reliving things in a different way. I'm re-seeing them in a different way. And for the section that I was writing this week, it was really quite, it was quite deep. And I realized that I hadn't really taken the opportunity to work through the deep grief that I was feeling. And it was one of those things that I'd pushed aside. So I had a few tears this week as I was writing that section, but onwards, onwards, and onwards. And where I'm up to for the next 2 weeks is that I need to choose a date to publish this. And it's always really, it's always really ambitious to say I'd like to have this done by the end of the year. And aspirational is the word I was looking for. It's an aspirational target, but I feel in reality this for me might be a next year thing. I'm not sure, but I do feel intuitively that there's much to be written if I ever get the chance to go away this year and escape lockdown, then much may be written while I'm in that space. So sometime next year would be good. And looking at brainstorming cover concepts. So this is where feedback from you would be really awesome, particularly if you know me or even if you just know things about me. I'd be really curious to hear what people's reflections would be on a potential book cover. So send your ideas through, and that may spark something for me, because right now I'm so in the middle of everything. I can't, I get asked these questions like, what's your working title? I'm like, yeah, I don't know what a working title might be for this book. And even as I've gone through and looked at I'm looking at my screen at the moment, that's why I'm looking away from the camera. So when I even look at the working titles I had, they might have sounded decent 2 weeks ago. But now I look at them and I'm like, ugh, really? I mean, one of them I had was The Infinite Search for Becoming Who You Already Are. I had another one that says Bridging Worlds and What It Means to Stand in Between. And I had another one which is like The Liminal Spaces, A Life in Between, but it makes me sound like The In-Betweeners or something. I don't know. I don't like any of those. But if you have any inspirations by what you heard in that week one, if you haven't heard it, then go back please and listen to it. And if you have any inspirations about a potential working title based on what you know about me, then I'm really happy to hear that. So I've also got the sun reflecting in my face at the moment. And then the other thing is table of contents. Now, part of my challenge has also been this constant desire for a table of contents. And as I look at authors that I really admire, they have really beautiful tables of contents, and I just haven't got mine yet. So I'm sitting in this space of realizing I just need to relax and keep writing and keep pushing, and eventually something will come, and I'm trusting that that's going to happen. So I do have to just surrender to that process. In terms of what I've written so far, for those who are interested, I've sent across 12 different chunks, as I'm calling them, because they're not chapters and they're not sections, they're 12 different chunks. And they collectively come to 60,000 words, which I didn't realize until last night. And I started to add them all up. And that's huge. I mean, 60,000 words is a massive amount of writing in the space of 2.5 months. And it wasn't all from scratch, because I did have them as old articles or things that I've written in the past that I've reworked into much longer sections or much deeper sections. But it's 60,000 words better than I was 2.5 months ago. And I know that a lot of that's going to end up on the cutting room floor, and I'm totally okay with that. So I keep writing, and I've probably got, I don't know, maybe another 20 odd sections on my list that I'm interested in exploring. Another thing that we need to do over this period of time is to build platform. So starting to think about, how do I build a better social media presence, for want of a better word, at a time when I'm so in the book and writing bits and pieces and trying to dial back activity around things like social media, and spending my time not scrolling and not posting and being a little bit more introverted so I can get this done. So I feel this real tension between, what I really want to do in terms of doing the book, and then feeling this kind of pressure to do this other stuff that I don't like doing a lot anyway. I'm not huge on social media anyway. So I have to somehow reconcile that. So that's what I've learned over the last 2 weeks. That's where I'm at. If you have any reflections on the potential book titles, working titles or subtitles, and cover design, I would love to hear from you because that's where I feel that some external input could really help me. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from you. That's the end of this episode, and stay tuned because next week, maybe I'll have something else to read to you. Stay tuned. Look forward to seeing you all soon.